special work session and regular council meeting to order. Could everybody please rise for a moment of silence, and let's remember all of those who passed away during the month. Please salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Dillon, you want to do roll call, please?
Mr. Gerard.
Present.
Mr. Ricchio. Mr. Devine. Here. Mr. Pezza. Ms. Cullen called. She said she was ill. Ms. Rodriguez.
Here.
Mr. Catroci.
Present.
Mr. Di Giuseppe.
Okay, I got an email, a text right before the meeting from Ellen Scansella, who isn't feeling well and is not going to be here this evening to get the check for the parade committee, so we're going to have it delivered tomorrow to her. But the parade is scheduled for November 30th at 1 p.m. It's a great event for our town, if everybody could come out and support it. The rain date is Sunday, December 1st at 1 p.m. So parade is November 30th, 1 p.m. Rain date Sunday, December 1st at 1 p.m. That's what, I think Pezza and Michael's going to do that. What's that? Can we have this delivered tomorrow too? That's the address right there. All right. So we'll talk to Mary first, so I don't hold you up, Mary. All right.
Mary Gesualdi, Wilson Avenue. I'm here tonight representing the AOC, the Academic Oversight Committee. And the AOC is a committee made up of concerned volunteers who care about the children in Bristol Borough and are willing to give of their time to raise money for things that the 21st Century Grant is unable to fund. They've already donated $17,000 to the children in Bristol Borough this year alone. But tonight I'd like to talk to you about the Bristol Fall Classic. I left a flyer on each of your desks. This year's Person of the Year is Ron Walker. Ron is the president of Allied Electronics. If you know Ron, you know he's a quiet giant, always in the background, always working on various civic, community, and philanthropic endeavors. There are actually 3 parts to the Fall Classic. The first event is the Bristol High School Symposium, which is on Wednesday, November the 20th at 9 o'clock, open to the public. You can come and hear a panel discussion where Ron Walker will talk to the students about his business success, his volunteerism, and answer any questions that the students might have. At that event, our superintendent, Dr. Rose Minetti, will announce the Student of the Year. The second part of the Fall Classic is the actual event, which is on Saturday evening, November 21st, from 6:30 to 10 at the Bristol Borough Public Works Building, with your permission. Tickets are $50, and with every ticket, you're entered into a $1,000 raffle. Tickets can be purchased at the tax office, Great IDs by Ann Mignoni Jewelers, and this year online at www.bblearningcenters.com. It will be catered by the King George. And that evening, the AOC will also be honoring 4 Teachers of the Year. That's something that we started last year. This year's teachers are Kathy Chapman from St. Mark's School, Dawn DeLuca from Snyder Girardi Elementary, Bobby Moyer from Bristol Middle School, and Heather Catroci from Bristol High School. And the last event The Person of the Year, the Teachers of the Year, and the Student of the Year are invited to ride in the Bristol Borough Parade on Saturday, November 30th at 1 o'clock, rain date December 1st at 1 o'clock. I'd like to thank you for your continued support, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Mary? So we'll make it an agenda item tonight to approve this event for our Public Works facility.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Thanks for all you
Thanks,
do,
Mary.
too. I appreciate it. Okay, next we have, I don't know if you guys are coming up together or not, Michael Gorman and Bill Pezza, or are you coming up individually?
Separately, I think.
Separately? Okay.
Good evening, Bill Pezza from Raising the Bar. I have a few announcements. I want to bring people up to date, both yourselves and people in town, about some of our activities. First, I want to congratulate Mary and the committee for selecting Ron Walker. He is truly a quiet giant. He's one of the board members of Raising the Bar, and he does an unbelievable amount of work behind the scenes. It's a wonderful selection. William Penn Bank has moved its corporate headquarters to Bristol. They're going to be in the Canal Works building at 10 Canal Street. They have brought 35 jobs with them, and they're having an open house on November 17th. November 21st, and you're all invited to attend. It's a wonderful facility. A good friend of mine designed it, Mr. Gorman, and it's real nice, and these are really progressive people, so you're all invited. You'll be getting an email invitation as well, but hope you can mark your calendar for that. In addition, William Penn, we met with, Raising the Bar met with business owners on Mill Street to talk about how we might enhance the lighting there. Originally, the meeting was designed to talk about how individual owners can light their buildings and light their windows, and that's going to be done. But in addition, one thing led to another. We ended up embracing a program that would add 10,000 lights to the street by wrapping lights around the poles. We had an estimate of $5,000 to do that, and we set out to raise money through donations. And we approached William Penn Bank, and they said, well, how much would it cost to be the sole sponsor? We said $5,000, and they said, we'll do it. So it's a nice way for them to roll out their presence in town. So we're going to have an event where we turn those lights on, and that's also going to be on the 21st at 6 o'clock. We're calling it Miracle on Mill. It's not a Christmas celebration, it's a lighting celebration. It's the week before, and all of our literature will clearly specify that it's a week and a day before the tree lighting, which is the best tree lighting in Bucks County, and Michael will talk to you about that. The night we do that, we're going to have a live band, we're going to have a DJ, Stepping Stone Dance Studio will do a routine, we're going to have face painting for the kids, we're going to have balloon art for the kids, the shops are going to be open later, the restaurants will be doing some things. So we're trying to make it a nice night and a party, and that's November 21st at 6 o'clock. The lights will be on before then because it gets dark so early, but we didn't want to start the program any sooner than that. The next item is, I'm sure you've seen it by now. If you haven't, you should. We commissioned John Mark Dubus to paint a mural in Bristol Borough. It's our first attempt. We've been talking about doing murals in town for a long time. This is our first attempt to do it. It's going to be about a 500 square foot mural. Its theme is celebrating Bristol's diversity. How many of you have seen it? Have you seen it yet? Okay. We're getting a lot of positive responses. The people on Facebook are loving it. People are riding by and honking the horn for John Mark as he paints. And basically what it is, it shows the Bristol Wharf with the word Bristol on the wharf as it is now. And then in front of it is a series of people. I think there's going to be 26 figures, kind of abstract, not abstract, but surrealistic figures, impressionistic figures of people of different ethnic backgrounds, different races and whatnot. And the banner is going to read, "Settled by the world's people." So Bristol Borough settled by the world's people. We're very pleased with it, and we want to thank the owner of the building, which is Paul Leinhauser and his brother. They own PKB Contractors, so if anybody out there is not sure where it is, the company itself, the entrance is on Otter Street, but the wall that we're using to paint is on Old Route 13, right across from the railroad tracks. We're very excited about it. And once it's done, we're going to have an opening ceremony. I'm not sure how we're going to pull that off, where we're going to have an opening ceremony there. We want to thank the chief. The chief has put an extra police car there to try to moderate traffic because people are zooming by there as they zoom by everywhere in today's age, but so we appreciate that. We are doing this through a grant, and we want to solicit donations. We're getting so many people responding positively, and if they want to continue to see public art in town at appropriate spots, we're soliciting donations so we can keep that going. That's the mural thing. The third thing, just as an aside, I went to see, my wife and I went to see the new the movie called Harriet, about Harriet Tubman. We all know Harriet Tubman. It's a remarkable, courageous woman, and it's a very well done movie. And, you know, we have descendants in town. Lou, you were good friends with Sam Ross, and Louise Davis is related. And I want to tell everyone that that monument at our riverfront is absolutely beautiful, and I want to make sure we emphasize it enough with our school children and with our own families and with our tourists, because it's a special place. And sadly, the sculptor who did that, Jim Gaffigan, a friend of mine from Morrisville, just recently passed away. And if you know Jim Gaffigan, you know he also did the Michael Dougherty statue at the lagoon. So if you haven't been there for a while, check out the Harriet Tubman Memorial. It's pretty nice. Finally, you know, our town tries to form partnerships between volunteers and the work you do as the officials of the town. And Mary's a classic example of what the AOC does. As she said, it's people volunteering for the things that interest them, and they want to work with kids, and they do that. Raising the Bar works to promote business in the business district, and that's what we do. There ought to be as many groups as possible emerging to do as many different things. And I want to, and I'm not saying this because it's mine, but I wrote a book 2 years ago, and it was called How Bristol Won After We Won the Contest. And it celebrated the people who came before us who worked very hard, and then it talked about how we won the contest. And then the third part of the book listed 41 recommendations on what we should be doing moving forward. And I want to read you 2 paragraphs from it. Now, this is 2 years old. A suggestion that we made 2 years ago. What we do with these 41 suggestions is we pick the low-hanging fruit. We pick the one we think we can accomplish next, and we work on it. So it says, I know that much of our Raising the Bar attention is focused on the business district, the riverfront, and our tourist attractions. We do that because we believe the advancement of those areas will have a ripple effect in economic growth throughout town. We also focus our activities because we can only do so much. But the truth is that we need to work on improving the quality of life for all neighborhoods, and that will take the involvement of a great deal of people. Raising the Bar will sponsor a town-wide meeting where neighbors are encouraged to come in groups and attendees can brainstorm about how they might organize their neighborhoods, how they may step up, form groups, and organize their neighborhoods. Hopefully, someone from each block would sponsor a meeting. I believe people want to do good things. They simply need a vehicle through which to bond. We've already been in contact with the county, and we've talked to some social agencies to bring in people with expertise who can talk to people about how to organize your neighborhood. People can get together to talk about how they can watch out for each other in terms of crime or vandalism, how they can beautify their blocks, how they can plant flowers together, how they can have block parties, watch out for each other's kids, but elevate themselves. Not to sit home and say, why isn't somebody doing this for me, but rather to step up and say, let's do it. So I just want you to make you aware of that. We're going to try to focus on that in January after the holidays. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well,
I have a meeting to go to.
Mr. Devine,
Yeah,
yes,
I got
sir?
a question for Bill. Well, more as like a statement. Bill, all the things that you do for Raising the Bar, and I think that you guys do an unbelievable job. But the problem is that you took Raising the Bar from a community group and you turned it into a political
All right,
action.
that's, Bill,
So, like,
Bill, you don't need to respond, just
This
because,
is what it is.
Tony, Michael, what do you have? I'm not getting
Before
into
Michael gets up, I want to
this.
say one more thing. Michael's going to be talking to you about the mural wall, and Joanna Snyder, who works all the time with the mural wall. I know Lou and the Rotary have done a lot with it.
Right.
But I want to point out, her goal, their goal, is to make sure that every kid in Bristol gets to see Bristol Borough from the river. That every kid gets to ride on that ship or another ship and gets to see it from the river. And I think that's a great experience and a great goal, and I commend her for that. Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Michael?
Michael Gorman, Mill Street. I'm here on behalf of Joanna Snyder, asking the permission, but also going to explain the permission of council to allow it to dock this year. The tall ship, the A.J. Merwald, is an original oyster schooner ship. It was built in 1928, and for those of you that do not know this, it's the official tall ship of New Jersey. The ship is a hands-on sailing classroom, and it operates throughout the region. Last year, Bristol hosted, when the Merwald was here, 4 classrooms for children, and they would like to expand it this year. Some of the ways that they're going to do that is their extended stay. So again, with your permission, they're asking to have permission to come and arrive between the 7th and 8th, to then begin the classroom, private tours, private charters, and anything that the community would want to do on it, beginning on the 9th, and they would leave May 26th. I know there's additional details that we would have to work out, and we'll provide that. But again, Joanna, she's out of the country. She asked if I could present this on her behalf.
So we'll make that an agenda item for tonight.
Thank you. Part of the reason with the extended stay is Burlington docks are no longer available. So they're asking if we could come here because of the success. In addition, again, to the education, please be aware that there will be public sales on the Delaware River, which will allow people to see Bristol from a different perspective, which is incredible. Also, there will be tours of the ship, and again, if you have any civil groups or private groups, they're willing and encouraging private charters. Lastly, last year, the Rotary Group and Action Manufacturing sponsored many of the children's tours to help the fundraising and the donation of the ship, and we're going to provide that through various civil groups and Raising the Bar to encourage that, so there's additional funding. The best part of this is that Bristol Borough, for each one of those tours, they normally charge, I believe it's over $2,000 per classroom tour. They're extending it to us for $825. So I think we really could take advantage of that, and I'm sure some of the civil groups that many of you are involved with, or myself, will be sponsoring those as well. Lastly, I think the key thing with this is to keep in mind how we always have taglines, is that this is the mixing of history with the service of the sailing on the Delaware River. I think that's it, and later we'll have further additional information about what's going to be done this year once we get together with the council and Bristol Borough that's supporting the tree lighting. Thank you.
Okay. We have Verizon Wireless here, so I guess it's I don't know who's presenting or everybody presenting. Go to the podium, and this is regarding the cell tower that has been proposed to put on the Jefferson Avenue complex. Council's we discussed some of this earlier and invited Verizon in. I think that there's a lot of concerns as far as cancer-causing issues and all the things with kids and fields, and so hopefully give us some oversight of what's going on and how this is going to work.
So thank you for hearing our proposal. We're just here to discuss it tonight. My name is Nan Chow, and what we want to do is we want to build a 123-foot monopole, and we will show you specifically where we want to build it. Matt Graubart is here to discuss what we want to put in the compound. It's an 18 by 24-foot fenced-in compound. The antennas will be on top of the tower. So Matt And we also have boards where we can show you specifically what we want to do. So he can discuss everything, all the equipment that we're going to be putting on the tower, and any and all questions.
So, do you want to come up here, or do you want to hold them up from where you are? You have you're saying you have boards to show?
It may be easier to work from up there, if that's okay.
If everyone can see.
That's fine. Well, the cameras are picking it up for at home. So,
Can see from here, but if not, yeah, great.
pardon me?
I hope everyone can see from here, too.
How big are the boards?
Same size as what
Same
you're looking at.
size?
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
All right, does he want to come up, or is he,
Yes, yeah. We just want to do what you guys want us to do.
whatever you guys, it's your presentation.
So he can
I'm
discuss.
going to give, what's your name?
Matt?
Matt?
Yes.
We're also going to give you a mic so people at home can hear you.
Okay.
All right, we'll give you
Here you
our vice president's microphone.
So he can discuss the specifics, the construction of the site. I also have Andy Peterson here to discuss why we need the site, the coverage, any and all questions
You want to?
about medical questions, cancer, EME.
And what's her name? Sue? So between the two of you could figure out how you want to do this.
Well, they want me to sit down.
Want you to sit down?
Sit down.
All right, Matt, you're up.
Thank you, guys. So I'll just start out with an overview, kind of work through this methodically, and then you guys can ask me questions at the end. So the proposed location is at 901 Jefferson Ave, which is your ball field area. The proposed compound and monopole are proposed to be located along the north property line. It's an industrial warehouse area to the north. We're proposing to bring in access from your existing paved parking area. There were some questions about access when we were out there at the site visit. And the ultimate decision was to use a turf cell, reinforced turf cell access road, just so Verizon could get a truck back there if they ever needed to service something. Most of the time, they could park in the parking area and walk back. But this makes it so you're not putting ruts in your grass area between your ball fields and things like that. Utilities, it's a fairly typical utility service that feeds this. Verizon's equipment's fed by about a 200 amp service, which is similar to what your home would be powered by. So we're proposing to bring power and fiber service underground, no above ground utilities, from this utility pole down by the corner of Jefferson Ave and Garden Street. We would bring them underground and follow the access road up to the compound.
So just let me add something to it for everybody at home, because people are familiar with the field. So the big hardball field that's in the parking lot, between that field and, which is called the minor league field, there's where pitchers warm up in between that fence, back against the old Keystone Lighting. So that's what they're referring to, the minor league field and the big hardball field.
Yeah, it's an open grass area at this time you guys use for warm-ups, tucking back along that fence. So just to go through kind of a close-up, this is what the compound will look like. It's fairly small. It's 18 feet by 24 feet. It's a fenced-in compound. We're proposing an 8-foot tall chain link fence, so it's not as easy to climb. This represents the monopole here. Verizon's proposing a diesel backup generator for in case of a power outage. And then really their equipment fits on a 4x7 pad. It's 2 cabinets. They're like an oversized refrigerator, about 7 feet tall, 3 feet wide, give or take. All of their equipment's contained within that. They have a utility backboard and then utility service backboard as well. It would be accessed via a swing gate, with a lock on there. And this here is a pad mount transformer, obviously for electrical service. So, and then This is an elevation view of the proposed tower. As Sue mentioned, it's a 123-foot tall tower. Verizon's antennas are represented by these 4 rectangles at the top. Now, with a monopole, typically you would get, a carrier would locate on a triangular or square-shaped platform. There would be arrays of antennas, 3 or 4 arrays of antennas that point out in specified directions. And Andy can kind of dig into that a little deeper with his presentation. The highest point up here is a lightning rod, which the whole tower and compound will come along with a grounding system that would be able to mitigate lightning strikes. Obviously, Verizon doesn't want to have their power or their equipment damaged, so the lightning suppression system is all designed to code. Verizon's cables will run from their equipment within the tower. It's not on the outside of the tower. That pretty much covers the overview, and I can take questions if you'd like.
How tall did you say this would be?
So the top of the physical tower is 123 feet, and then the lightning rod goes another 5 feet above that to 128 feet.
So what's the next board that you have?
Oh, that's not mine. All right. So this is just an overlay onto a satellite imagery, just kind of showing where your those 2 ball fields that you referenced, with the access road extending up in between, and then the compound being located back here along that back tree line.
All right, so if you're done with the boards, I guess we all can go back to the podium, and you want to deal with it that way?
Sure, that's
Or
fine.
you rather stay here and field questions from council? I think the podium
Go
is
up to this
better, I'll be honest.
podium. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so whoever out of the 3 is, or all 3 want to go to the podium, that's fine. Or does somebody else have something?
Before we don't take, maybe I'm Andrew Peterson, maybe I can talk a little bit about the radio frequency.
Whatever you want to do, you want to go to the podium?
Yeah, I have a board too that I can.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, set it up.
Hi, I'm Andrew Peterson. In an effort to maybe head off some questions that we'll probably get anyway, I'll do a quick presentation on the radio frequency. Verizon Wireless currently has decent coverage in the area. It's really a capacity issue that we're dealing with. So over the last decade or so, with the advent of the smartphone and now all the other uses that folks are finding for their wireless devices, streaming video, FaceTiming, et cetera, we all use these devices for a lot of different things, and there's certainly more on the horizon. There is currently an issue in the borough with capacity. So in order to deal with that, what we do, generally speaking, from a design perspective, is we lessen the coverage area of each of the sites. So we divide the geography into smaller areas. That way the network as a whole can support more capacity. We can reuse our frequencies, and that way, support that additional capacity. So how we display this is probably not what you're used to seeing from a before and after perspective on a new cellular facility. If we rewind maybe 10 years or so, we did mostly just coverage sites where we would show you a donut hole, and then we would fill that donut hole with new coverage from a new site. This is looking at the network from through a bit of a different lens. When we talk about capacity, we're going to add capacity by, as I said, adding the proposed new site to divide the geography into smaller areas. So in order to illustrate that, there's first and foremost a map on the easel. You'll see the borough most central to the the map exhibit, and then you see this patchwork of different colors. Each of the existing facilities is providing for 3 of those different colors through the 3 arrays of antennas that are on the existing facilities. So I know that's kind of a mouthful, but by way of example, if we look at the site across the river, that Verizon calls East Burlington, you'll see that there is this kind of red area to the east, the blue area to the west, and this greenish area to the north. Those three pie-shaped pieces are the coverage footprints of the sectors of that site. And the sectors are nothing more than a set of antennas that point in a certain direction. So if you look around at the other sites,
Excuse me 1 minute.
Sure.
Pull that away from your, just hold it there.
Too loud?
Yeah.
I'm
you're
sorry.
Texting me.
Sorry. So the other facilities that Verizon has on the air are also indicated here with these green icons. And similarly, they have a patchwork of colors around them from their three sectors. And then we have the location of the proposed monopole. It's labeled Bristol Borough, most central to the exhibit. And you'll see that in this view of the network, it is not turned on. There's no coverage. There's no three sectors of coverage footprint surrounding it. So this is the existing conditions from a best server perspective. And you can see that the sites that Verizon calls Edgeley and Bristol, those are the two sites that have sectors kind of pointing into the area. And those sectors of those sites are currently overloaded, so we need to offload those areas to let the network function and support more capacity demand. So if we activate this facility with the antennas at the proposed center line, I'm going to hold that there for a second. Nothing's going right. You'll see that we're adding three new pie-shaped footprints of coverage here, and that's the new coverage footprints of the proposed site, the Bristol Borough site that we're proposing. So those areas of pink, red, and blue that are new coverage footprints, those areas will now be served by this site, offloading that capacity demand from the existing sites and allowing the network to support more demand from customers. So that's the idea here. We're going to boost the overall network capacity by adding a new facility. There was a mention of health effects of this type of facility. First of all, I'll say that, this type of facility at a park is pretty commonplace, or, if you look at half, maybe a quarter to a half of, in my estimation of township and borough parks, you're going to see a facility like this. I wouldn't say it's out of place. In fact, I'd say it's pretty common use at a facility like this. So I don't know, and a lot of the, perceived health effects, it's kind of just a stigma associated with this. If you look at the American Cancer Society or any reputable source, you'll find that the studies that have been done, and it's been ongoing now really since the Second World War, there have been studies being done on the health effects of electromagnetic exposure. And the FCC has adopted guidelines, very specific guidelines for exposure to electromagnetic energy. And what I do is I take the specific design criteria for this facility, and I apply the FCC's guidelines and the formulas for evaluating anticipated exposure levels. And if we look at the design of this facility specifically in the surrounding areas and apply those formulas, I have a report that I've authored, and the findings of that are that the exposure levels under worst case assumptions would be less than 2.1% of the FCC, of the applicable FCC standard at any location of public access. So this facility will be compliant with FCC guidelines for human exposure. It will be compliant by a significant margin, about 50 times. And you have to remember that that's under some, I'd say, unrealistic worst case scenario, where we consider 100% ground reflection for basically 4 times the power density. And that's the measuring stick that the FCC uses for evaluating these types of facilities. And that's just one of the upper limit assumptions that I make. So this facility will be compliant from that perspective by a significant margin.
But the question I have is, you're saying 100%, 98% it's safe.
Yes,
At 2%, when you got kids involved, it's still a lot. I'm talking only myself, I don't know how everybody else feels. But 2% to put a kid in danger of maybe some cancer-causing radiation or something, I would never support, me personally.
well, all the research out there, and I want to be clear, we're not talking about we're under by 2%. We are at only 2% of the exposure, so we're not at 98%.
No, I said 98% safe.
Well, no, it doesn't mean that the FCC's, the literature on this, from the FCC and other sources show that exposure at 99.99% is just as safe as 1%.
Okay.
That threshold is built with a lot of safety margins included. And all of the studies, the reality is all the studies out there now are focusing on exposure from our phones, because it's the phones that we put close to our head, and the power from these types of devices falls off drastically with distance. So, if there are concerns out there, folks should be concerned about the device that's in their hands and in their pockets and next to their heads,
Right.
and not letting their kids use phones. It's kind of counterintuitive, but the closer you are to one of these facilities, the less exposure you're going to have, because your phone, which is the real source of exposure, powers itself down
Right.
when it's close to a facility, because it doesn't have to talk so loudly, if you will, to get back to a facility that's closer. So when you have a facility that's close to you, your exposure level is actually decreasing from your device. So that's the reality is if there is a concern out there, it's the devices that are in our
Well, I think that's why we wanted you
hands.
to come in tonight, because I think everybody has concerns.
Right, and I understand, these are questions
Our
that,
main concern is, I know you said there's other places that have them in recreation areas, but we have kids playing right under this thing.
understood, and yeah.
Left field and in right field of a minor league game. So, we really need some kind of, and I'm sure you'll supply everything we need to prove that these things are really safe.
Yeah,
The other thing is, when we met out there, we looked at other areas, and basically, this is the only spot that you guys really can find, because I guess you had a compass or you had something out there to tell you where you needed to be. Because we even talked about going behind the canal. And,
Further north?
yeah, and they kept saying, no, it's too far, so there must be a location that you must be in for
Yeah,
this to work.
The issue with moving further north is that's pushing closer to the existing Verizon site they call Edgeley, which is on a water tank
Right.
just north. So we need to, ideally, we would kind of be evenly situated between these two sites.
Because even going behind the Amish market, and we talked about all these other locations, didn't work.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is the only complex or the only area that really benefits you guys.
Yeah, moving north in this case really isn't an option. It just pushes us too close to that existing site.
What about where the hardball field is? What if you ran this thing where your road access would be parallel to the high lines? And you'd be more or less in right field of you'd be away from the rest of the.
The only thing is, we have a right-of-way back there that they own. See, if you go back down that road,
Where
there's
the
a set,
right-of-way ends, it has to end somewhere.
there's a set of steps that they use, Conroe, to go up to the High Lines to work on the tracks and all that. We talked about back in that right field corner, and they
But even
just.
if you ran into this
Oh, I know.
center right.
Yeah.
it
I
seems
wasn't
like
there
that-
for the design walk. Sue was there. She may be able to
And the
address.
access,
So why don't you explain, or whoever,
Sure. So you're talking about the northeast, if you want to, Andy, you want to put up that aerial map, the
Yeah,
one
sure.
that's facing out right now?
I'll be your Vanna White if you'd like.
I appreciate that.
I'm not quite as easy as on the eyes, but
So I believe you're referring to the northeast corner of the property, up in that area, is that correct?
No, down to the right where is it now, yeah.
okay.
Just so I can see from here.
And the reason I'm thinking this is, instead of having access through the midst of our fields, and, you know, I'm familiar with the turf cells, and I'm familiar how that doesn't always, you know, it doesn't give you a manicured lawn.
Sure.
When you're done. It's rough. And if you have thinking and stuff like that, it becomes more of an issue than just having a turf out there. People are walking all the time from the fields. If you're along the hardball field, your access with your trucks doesn't have to change unless if you had to pave it, but I think it's cinder back there now, and you get to the point and you make a little bit of a left to get out of the right of way for Amtrak, it seems like it's a lot less intrusive on the rest of the field and doesn't create this issue of if they have to go in there, they gotta go through the midst of our, you know.
So I will say about access to these, typical access is once every 4 to 6 weeks for maintenance. All of the times this facility will be unmanned. I do understand the concern with access, you know, say that it was during, you know, while people were there. Most likely that access would be able to be, you know, with a technician with a backpack, laptop walking back to the site. When they could park in the parking lot, in the off chance that they needed to get a truck back there.
The guy has to walk that far, he's gonna take his truck, and that's why you said you're gonna put the turf cell down. So if you're gonna put that down, that means there's gonna be vehicular traffic back there. So I'm thinking, rather than have it in the midst of our complex, put it on the edge of the complex.
So I believe we had looked at that at the design visit, and there was some objections. I don't recall exactly what the objections were. There's a grass area that comes off of that paved parking area, that grass area along the southeast side of that ball field and along the tracks. We could certainly work with that if that was available. The issue with the other location I was referring to behind the ball field, I believe that there was the easement and then access. There was no way to get access through there between the ball field and the existing fence, and there's a drainage swale that runs through there that we would not want to
You
impact.
guys are open to the right field for baseball terminology as opposed to
Walk back up
south?
there.
You come back up.
This spot?
Yeah.
Correct. There's it's like a triangular shaped area in here. We could certainly put our
I thought that
facility
we looked, is there room behind the right field fence, right in the corner?
back here.
Yes.
That was what I was referring to. There is a drainage swale. It's a shallow grass bottom swale that runs back there.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to impact that because that's.
Yeah, that's not the area though, that's not the
Come
right
back
field.
down.
Yeah.
Come
Come
down.
down to the bottom.
I know coming down this way, but we don't know if we have enough ground, we don't own that ground.
Obviously, if we move
would have
forward
to
to that
survey it.
location, we would handle a survey.
Right.
you know,
But
and
we're
go that
talking,
route. I believe there was a good deal of space in that area, even if you do have an additional right of way along those tracks. I think there's enough space to work with there.
right.
Um,
I mean, that was our suggestion from day one, to put it down the right field line in that corner.
But not behind the fence, we're saying, right?
No, but if you don't have enough,
Gotta use your mic.
if we don't have enough room, if we don't have enough room down the right field on the side, can we go behind the fence? We don't know where Comrail's right of way is.
Yeah, so
We wouldn't construct it on Conrail's right of way, but the right of way could probably be used for your access, because that's what they're using it for. So, to me, it gets it away from all the activity. It gets the problem solved with access. Because many, you get your vehicles in there,
Mhm.
and it's kind of tucked away. You know, it's not
Right.
not the focal point of our, you know, our recreation fields.
Yeah, and the question I have is just more along the lines of just, I agree with everything they're saying, but my concern more is with some of the terminology that I'm not familiar with. When you talk about ground reflection and different things like that, I'm picturing kids on these fields, and where is the exposure coming from? So I'm just, like, in my head, like, I have no idea about these things. I'm just picturing, like, transmissions going through, you know, or reflecting off the ground, are they going down, or reflecting off buildings, or, like, why would there be any type of concern for, you know, the kids or anybody that's on those fields if they're 123 feet in the air?
Yeah, and that's a great point. The energy from these types of facilities is, the vast majority of that energy is directed toward the horizon. If you can imagine a mag light flashlight, you can tighten that beam and loosen that beam by spinning it. That's similar to how these antennas work. They're panel-style antennas, and they concentrate the energy towards the horizon with a little bit of down tilt. So if you look at page 6 of that report, you'll see, oh, you know what, you don't have a copy of this. If you look at page 6 of my report, this shows the maximum exposure level is about 2%, and that's at about 400 feet away from the site. As you're closer to this site, as you said, that energy is, for the most part, passing over your head. It's passing over your head because the antennas are so high, and it's directing that energy toward the horizon. So if you can imagine some mag lights some large lights at the top, almost like a lighthouse pointing that energy out toward the horizon. Now there's enough energy coming down because you're quite proximate, that you'll still have great service, when you're at the ball fields. But as far as exposure goes,
They're basically shooting over our heads.
right, the maximum exposure where that beam starts to head towards the ground is about 400 feet away. But by then, you're so far away, not only in height, but also in vertical distance, this maximum is about 2% of the FCC exposure limit, and that's assuming worst-case scenarios.
Okay. Next.
Sure.
Your example shows the tower with just the antennas on the top. Is Verizon going to limit that to just being on the top? Because you go past some of these poles now, and it looks like a junkyard with 1,000 different little antennas all along. That I know they're not your equipment, but is Verizon going to rent out space on this tower?
It's typically a requirement of the wireless ordinance that the facility be made available for co-location. I'm not sure that that's the case in the case of the borough's wireless ordinance, but that's generally the case, that in order to prevent the proliferation of these types of facilities, that we make it available for others, the AT&Ts, the T-Mobiles of the world, to also attach their antennas. So what happens is you end up typically with, we would have our antennas, which is typically a triangular shaped mount with our 3 sectors, up to 4 antennas each. The antennas are, about the size of a shoebox, except elongated to 6 or 8 feet. And then 10 feet below ours, you may have an additional platform, let's say a co-locator, an additional carrier, and then perhaps another co-locator below that.
So now we're getting closer to the kids.
Right, and as each one is added, right, the antennas are coming down in height, so it will increase the exposure level marginally. Not a real concern as far as approaching the FCC limits. I've done, after these facilities are constructed, Verizon is always willing to actually perform a survey of this type of facility if there is a concern, and any subsequent co-locator, I'm sure would agree to the same. It's common practice.
I think
That's the
that,
problem, the co-locators. We're not going to have these same reports, and we're not going to have any jurisdiction over it at that point.
Well,
Let me just interrupt just here. So in this specific case, because we're trying to minimize the space at the bottom of the tower, they would more than likely have to come to you first for approval, whether or not you're going to permit them to put antennas on the tower. Typically, we do build towers for co-locators, but that's because municipalities want that. It's really up to you.
And who negotiates that fee? Or does Verizon get the fee and we just get the antennas?
We could do it both ways, whether we give you a percentage of what we make off the pole, or any additional carrier that comes, they will have to lease the additional space from you.
Well, that's all something, if we're interested, we could sit down and talk.
That's right, yes, but in this instance, because we want to minimize the space right now, I think that's not going to be that much of a
To move
problem.
this along, how does council want to proceed? Do you want me to form a committee to keep this conversation going and bring it back to all 8 members? Or do you want to just make a decision tonight whether you're in favor or not in favor?
I like the idea of having a committee, because I don't want to me, it still seems like we have so many more questions. And the other thing about it is, when I hear that they have whatever sponsors or whatever it is, like, I would think that we could just write something up where we're going, if we do accept it, I wanted to be where these antennas are all that they put on there, only because of where it's at. The lower they go, the closer they're going to be to the kids, so.
Here's the question I have. If we're doing it, we're going to make sure it's 100 or 200% safe for everybody.
Right.
So that's the first thing, or we wouldn't even be discussing it. So knowing that we may move in the direction, making sure it's safe and all, do you want to continue these talks or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're in favor?
Yeah.
Greg, Dave, Louie, Betty? Okay, so we could be here another 2 hours, it's just, it's
That's
not
fine.
being, we understand what's going on. I'll have the manager set up a meeting. I'll form a committee of a couple members of council with the solicitor and mayor. We'll sit down and see what we can do, and then I'll bring that back to council, and hopefully at our December meeting, and we're either going to move this along, or in the meantime, if you guys can go out to the location again on Jefferson Avenue, if you want to meet there, we can have our Public Works Director again meet us there and see if I think we need to find out, I think from what I'm hearing, everybody be more happy with down the right field line at the big hardball field. Right?
Yes.
Tony,
Yeah, I agree.
you guys?
Yeah, the only question I have, just so I can do my own homework, because right now, like, to me, the internet is supposed to be great, but there's so much information that I don't know what I'm getting. What would be some good things I can look up on my own to kind of, I know that they're kind of like an education.org and different things. What would be some good?
From the perspective of radio frequency exposure?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I can give you a list of references. I'll give you my card, and
Okay.
but I would start with the American Cancer Society,
Okay.
if that's a concern, and they have some references. They have an entire section, also the FCC. But I can give you the specific, I can email you the list of.
Okay, I
It's a
appreciate
question
it.
I get all the time, so I have a canned
Right.
email on my computer I can send you that has a lot of, you can find anything you want out there on the internet, like you
Right,
said. There's some murky waters out there when it comes to this, because, I've seen a lot of hoax videos of people popping popcorn by putting 4 cell phones.
Yeah.
And, things like that. So there's a lot of junk out there, but there's also some great information if you look at reputable sources. Yeah.
And when
you
you're
bet.
talking in an area that big, 18 by 24 is not a big space. So,
With the radio frequency as opposed to the electromagnetic forces on high-tension wires? More or less?
Comparison-wise?
Comparison-wise.
So first, high tension, 60 hertz, very, very low frequency relative to this, and it's transmission lines. The point is to get the energy from point A to point B along those lines, but there are electromagnetic fields that emanate from those also. Very different, but relatively speaking, this is a much lower energy. but also much higher in frequency, so it's different, kind of like an apples and orange comparison, but it's electromagnetic emissions either way that are, that are emanating.
Kind of gets all lumped together when you're,
Yeah, 'cause we all have to live by the railroad all our lives, you know what I'm saying, so.
All right, so any other questions before we move on? All right, guys, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This time I'm going to open up public participation, so anybody on this side of the room would like to speak on anything, go to the podium and state your name and address. Excuse me. Could you maybe move that so I can, that's okay. Anybody on this side of the room would like to speak on anything, go to the podium, state your name and address. That ends public participation. Chief Herbie.
Just a couple things. One is, recently we had change your clock, and we usually goes along with that, change your battery, so I would say, if you still have the type of smoke alarms or carbon monoxide alarms that require batteries, that you should make sure that you've changed those batteries out. So we're working on a data call from the DCED Fire Department survey. It's extremely detailed, and it's going to take some time, and they're looking to get that information back by December 20th. And then Congressman Fitzpatrick, Frank Ferry, and Jennifer O'Mara are going to be holding a roundtable discussion on the issues facing the volunteer fire service on November 25th at the community college. That's it.
Any questions for Herbie?
I have one. With the winter coming around, and it seems like it's going to be colder than usual, and I know that's when usually they have the carbon monoxides, that's what they are good for, the heaters. Are you guys still giving them out, or?
Still have them, yes.
You still have them? What's the number if someone needs one?
They can call my fire station, they can call the borough, extension 27 is the fire chief's number,
Okay,
and we just had a carbon monoxide incident over the weekend.
okay, and you don't go out and install them anymore? They can
We
pick it
can.
up, or they can pick it up if they'd
Right.
like? Okay, thank you.
Somebody, if they were ones that we installed before, and if they're between 5 and 7 years old, they're reaching their end of service,
Okay,
and so we can swap those out.
okay, thank you.
We're still asking them to bring the
Yeah,
old...
bring the old ones back.
The old ones, okay.
Tony?
Yeah, Herb, is there any progress on the money for 53? Is that still in escrow?
Yes. I think there's a meeting scheduled
Just,
this month.
I was going to bring that up. Anything else for Herbie?
No.
Just so you know, there is a meeting scheduled for November 20th at 7 PM. It's a meeting that I'm going to attend with the 5 companies. And we'll give you an answer hopefully in December where we are.
Okay, thanks.
Chief?
thank you. For the month of October, according to Bucks County Communications, we had a total of 1,066 incidents. We had 94 traffic stops, 24 arrests. The drug take-back program went very well. Besides having it at Town Hall, we also had it over at Grundy Towers. It was very well received. On the negative aspect of narcotics, since October 1st, we responded to 9 overdose calls. Our officers administered 5 times Narcan, so credited for saving, through their actions, 5 lives. Unfortunately, we had 2 fatal overdoses during the month of October. We also met with the school system during their in-service training, and we presented how to respond during a critical incident in the school with the assistance of our officers, and Ben Salem Police came up, Lieutenant Bobby Race, did a presentation with the school, and we're still working with them on other aspects of that. As you know, thanks to the council, we presented to the RDA for a proposal for a police car under the grant from Bucks County Development Authority. And another thing is, just on a positive note, we had a visit from the Children of God Nursery School, came over with some of their younger students, got a tour of the police department, and the police car, and gave him some stuff. That was a good day.
Questions for the chief?
You haven't, oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You haven't gotten any complaints with the Grundy, the traffic outside of the Grundy now school started, have you? Because I haven't gotten any, but usually there's a lot of traffic out here.
There's a reason for that.
I'm sorry, what location?
Right by the Grundy, when you go into the Grundy Towers,
Uh-huh.
and you know, school's letting out and there's.
No, we addressed it in the beginning of the year. They're usually pretty vocal to us when that occurs.
Yeah, that's what I
And,
was
and I'll be very honest with you, I'm sure there's stragglers that we miss. I know I grabbed one last week myself, I just happened to be there, so.
Okay.
We do our
And just
best
so
to try
you
to-
know, I really did appreciate seeing you ride around on Halloween with your lights on and making sure that our borough was safe. Thank you.
It was a nice night. It was a
Thank
great
you.
night for the kids.
Chief, is there, I mean, I know we're in the middle of an epidemic, as many states are, but is there a profile of the kind of house that often these overdoses occur in? And what I'm getting at is, you know, are these halfway houses where most of these things happen, or are they often just residential?
No, I'm going to be very honest with you, it's not the halfway houses. It's the residential problems, rental houses that are not well-maintained by landlords, and a couple, even of the houses that we most recently were involved with were problem houses that were homeowners.
Right.
But actually, the substance abuse homes, they pretty much keep a tight lock and key on their people.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the chief?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, chief. Greg, what do you have?
I know I had a brief conversation with Mr. Dillon about the sidewalk on Riverfront North, the project that had been stalled across from the Ratcliffe Cafe, and the property owner did say that they would be fixing that sidewalk in the very near future. I know that there's a lot of people all around town who walk that walk, and then, of course, there's a lot of people at Seabird, which is a 55 and older community, who it's kind of a struggle to get out into Ratcliffe Street to walk around it. So I think we have some promising news that that project's about to start again in general, but they did say that they would get right on the sidewalk, so I did have a few questions about that. And Mr. Dillon, is there an update you can give on the project itself?
Ratcliffe Court.
Yes.
Trustee called today and said that they're finalizing final approvals with DEP. They expect that to be done hopefully by Friday. And today, the trustee said that they had a surveyor out surveying for that sidewalk installation. And the trustee, who's out of Atlanta, Georgia, is supposed to be in town tomorrow. So I think we're somewhat optimistic that finally something that probably should have only taken, say, 45 days with DEP took like 5-6 months.
Right.
It's still not over.
Okay.
But you're dealing with a lot of bureaucrats in that organization.
Yep. And again, you know, I'm very enthused with the progress that I see at Mill Run, and I just hope it continues. So, that's all I have.
Yeah. The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank, even though Mr. Ricky is not here, I want to thank him for his service. And I want to thank all the veterans for their service. And it's kind of something that, you know, I think that we take for granted. We all do. You know what I mean? But those guys that are there fighting for our country, they're over there now sacrificing for us to have our freedoms. I just want to, you know, recognize all those ladies and gentlemen that are fighting for us. The first thing I have is going to be something, Mr. Dillon, that I'm going to have to probably send you some pictures, but there's a property on Beaver Street, it used to be Don's Seat Covers, that it's just like a building that I haven't really noticed it as much in the, you know, as it starts to get colder, but in the summer months, in the spring, the grass kind of grows out of control, and now neighbors have reached out to me to talk about, you know, there are squirrels and some animals that are kind of, you know, running into that property. So I'll send you some pictures tomorrow, and then maybe we could reach out to whoever that owns that property to see if it's something. I don't know if I haven't seen any action over there, if they're selling it or if anybody's interested, but you know, if that's something that maybe they're gonna put up for sale, we can look into maybe purchasing that and turning it into some parking or something over there. I know I brought this up in the past too. Trash receptacles along Beaver Street where the businesses are, especially because it's such a thoroughfare coming from on Beaver Street from maybe Bristol Township or wherever they're crossing over 13 and heading to the train stations. I just think that if we had even 2 extra receptacles, that people would be more, kind of receptive to throwing their things in the trash instead of just throwing it on the street or in the gutter. So, I mean, if that's something that we could look at, I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item to purchase them, or is that something that, you could look into and let me know if that's something that we could purchase and get that, find the best location on Beaver for that. The other thing I would like to do is I want to add to the agenda, and I know we've been talking about this for the past few months, but I would like to add on to the agenda for our borough crew to start cutting that bush and overgrown grass along Garden Street. So I would like to, I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item, but I want it to be an agenda item just so we can vote on it, so we can get, at least the people on Garden Street, they could at least see where, where the council stands on getting that cut.
I don't know how you could cut somebody, we don't own the property, but that's fine, it's on the agenda to vote on.
Well, the idea of that I understand is it sounds weird that, we shouldn't be able to cut other people, but we already do it. We already cut other people's property. We already cut SEPTA's property on the other side. So, to say that we don't do it, and...
Tony, it's an agenda item, we'll vote on it.
All right, thank you, sir. And then the last 2 things is just, they're really more kind of observations, all right, during the election. The first 2 things that I observed on the election that just happened were, I want to make it very clear, and I think that it's clear now, is that for all the good things that Raising the Bar does, they...
Stop you right there.
can't
It doesn't
stop me.
have anything to
Listen,
do
This
with...
has everything, this is my time to talk.
agenda?
Is this the work session?
What does it have to do with the borough?
Is this my time?
Your time pertains to the borough.
This is the borough.
I'm not going to have you bash Raising the
This
Bar.
is not going to be, listen, number
right,
one,
go ahead.
you don't have the authority.
Yes,
to
I
tell me-
do.
No, you don't. You have the authority to run the meeting. You have the authority to shut people down. It's called censorship.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. And I just want to make it very clear that for all the good things that Raise the Bar has done for the borough, that Bill Pezza and Raising the Bar are no longer, they should not be considered a community group. They should be considered a political action group. And the reason for it is the last 2 elections, one in the West Ward during the primary, and then the one in the North Ward just now in the general election, they had everybody in that place from Raising the Bar out there politicking, actively politicking for Ralph DiGiuseppe's candidates. So, to me, I just want, listen, it's not a negative thing. All I want is people to understand what it is. You can come and you can do all the positive things, but just understand when he's up there talking, when Mr. Pezza is up there talking, Bill is only concerned with what's going on one part, and that's Mill Street and whatever's going on in that part of the town. And I know people are going to get upset about it, but all I want you to do is listen. The positive that's come along with it, you also just need to look at it with, you just have to look at it through what it really is. It's not a community group. It is a political action group. And there's 2 things that you can see why. Because anytime that there's things that are going on in town, when we have our council president who likes to, make directions and he does things and we call him out on it, Bill Pezza and Raising the Bar does not ever say anything about it. They just ignore it. And when you ignore things that are happening in town and you let somebody lead on it, and it's never, it's never subdued or it's never, talked about, there's a problem there. But the second thing I also would like to say is, I want to thank everybody in the North Ward, because when that election was run, I ran it for $257. I spent $257, and I had 4 or 5 people that were out there helping me, that didn't get paid anything. They were helping me because they believed in something I was doing. Now, on the other hand, my opponent, who is a great guy, absolutely a good dude, but he was part of that whole Raising the Bar and Ralph DiGiuseppe team, that they put so much pressure and so much money and so much effort into trying to quiet one person. You already control the majority of the vote. And the one thing I'm proud to say is that that North Ward could not be bought. The North Ward was smart enough to understand that they need a voice that's going to speak. They really do not want a dictator or some type of, somebody that just controls it and not having a group or other people that are coming. Now, with that said, I also would like to see, moving forward, that we can work together, because clearly the North Ward sees the positive things that I do and what Dave Gerard does. So hopefully now we can work together as a group, and you should know that when you go into the North Ward with how much money and whatever you're going to do, is that the people there still know they get representation through me and Dave Gerard. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Mr. Gerard.
Yes, thank you. At election time, I would like to encourage all present and future council persons to spend a day at the polls, even when you're not on the ballot. I have done that, and I find it enjoyable to see and talk to the people who have elected me. And on that note, Mr. Dillon, if you could write this down, please. A pothole behind 625 Dorsey Street in the alleyway next to the storm drain. Also, a constituent wants a warning line next to the stop sign at Inlet and Garden Street. It's actually on Garden Street. The line has faded where you cannot see it, and they're running that stop sign. He thinks that that 12-inch white warning sign before the stop sign would be helpful, if you could do that for me also. And also, I've been talking for about 9 months, the construction trash in the Buckley Street alleyway behind the school. If the guys finally get some free time, if they could clean that up, I would appreciate that. And lastly, I received this brochure from the Committee to Secure Bristol's Future concerning the North Ward. And in it, it states, in the past, before Gerard and Devine, and I'll read verbatim, Garden Street didn't have high overgrown grass, and alleys were cleaned on a regular basis. Garden Street did not have high grass, and alleys were cleaned on a regular basis. Mr. Dillon, Mr. Winslow, myself, and along with Mike Fitzpatrick's chief of staff, we spent a couple hours a while ago. We showed her all the spots we would like to clean up on Spruce Street, Pine Street, Corsi Street, Garden Street. We were hoping that a congressman could put some pressure on Amtrak to help keep their properties cleaned and cut. Since the Committee to Secure Bristol's Future seems to want Garden Street cleaned and cut, I would also like to make a motion on the agenda to have the borough workers clean this area, and I guarantee to the people of Garden Street that Gerard and Devine will vote yes, and let's see who else will vote for that motion. Thank you, that's all I got.
I won't vote for it. And I also
What's
don't
that?
see,
What's
I
that?
also don't see in that literature where it mentions you or Tony's name. Do you see your name in there anywhere?
It says before, over the years, before. I don't want to
For what?
mention, I don't want to
Well,
mention
you
names.
guys wanna
but-
talk about- I
but-
let this
but-
go
But if you're
tonight.
going to put stuff in there that we're not getting the
What else do
job
you have,
done,
Dave?
we can't get the job done,
What
because
else do
every
you
time
have?
we ask, it says it's Amtrak's property. I've been asking for 9 months to get that alleyway behind Buckley Street cleaned up. There it is, right there in black and white. Alleys were cleaned on a regular basis.
Huh.
But in 9 months, I can't get Buckley Street cleaned up.
It's a shame.
Yeah, why?
It is.
Why can't we get that cleaned up?
You have anything else?
That's all I got.
Mr. Catroci?
Okay. I've reached out to the high school to try to get students for community service to survey our parking areas in town. I'd like to move forward. We have had some parking improvements, but I think we really have to focus in on this. I think this is a real issue in town, both from a convenience standard and even a property value standard, so that's one thing I will continue to work on. Another issue is I seem to have a lot of complaints now. There seems to be people moving tenants in without notifying the borough, without asking for inspections. And I think we need to take a look at this, and I think we have to, this has to be a new target. It's not fair to people that either are homeowners or even tenants next to somebody who moves in without doing the right things, and they seem to, when your landlord isn't getting the inspections, it means he doesn't have a lot of concern for our town. And I am a landlord in town, so and I don't like when people say about absentee landlords, some landlords are local and they don't do the right thing, and some are out of this area and don't care, and they just buy places, and if it's a matter of convenience, so I think it has to be a target for this council. We've done it before, and usually with much success, but sometimes we get focused on other things, and we've been focused on a lot of things in the past few years that have been very successful for the image of our town, but now I think we need to take a look at the housing and really focus in on that. That's all. Thank you.
Betty?
On the 500 block of Bath Street, there's a sign, I believe it's a street sweeper sign, but it's completely faded. I'd like to see that sign replaced, and I can send you the address where it's at. Also, I don't know if it was last month or the month before, I asked if we would check into behind the 500 block of Pond, where Josefina's shop is, from there to Washington Street. We need some lighting back there. Some residents are complaining that they can't go in the back, and that's where they park their cars because it's so dark back there. Also, I think it was last month, we had a gentleman here from my ward. We had painted the yellow line on House Street to avoid the trucks that were ruining the sidewalk, and we had to replace the sidewalk. So I was looking into maybe asked if council would pursue acquiring a lot at Bath and Howe for open space and parking. I was thinking if we could sit down and talk about that, and that would resolve some of the problems we're having with that little area, because the line still goes far back, and there's just not enough parking, which is, a problem everywhere in Bristol. And that's it. No, I'm sorry. The most important. On behalf of the Puerto Rican Culture Association, I'd like to thank the past members. The president was Maria Barrical, Vice President Nareda McCauley Brewstead, Secretary Esther Rivera, and Treasurer Rosalie Barrical. Now, the new members for the next 2 years are President Carmen Ruiz, Vice President Nareda McCauley Brewstead, Secretary Esther Rivera, Co-Secretary Karen Rosado, Treasurer Rosalie Barrical, and Co-Treasurer Pete Schaller. I just wanted to announce that because this organization works very hard to bring our Puerto Rican culture into the town, and I'd like to thank the past and thank the future, because it's going to be in 2 years, 50 years that we'll be celebrating Puerto Rican Day, and I think that's an honor in this town. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple things. First off, also too, I'd like to thank all the veterans out there who have served previously and currently are serving all around the world in making sure that we continue to have this freedom, such as having a meeting like we're having tonight. The fire chief and the police chief both gave their report. On the fire chief's side, I attended the fire board meeting with the fire chiefs, and just one of the things that had come up, and Chief Slack does this quite a bit, the meetings review different fire calls or particular challenges that they've had over the last month or so. And there's some concern about, because we had recently had a call for people trapped in an elevator. You think about Bristol, you don't think about elevators, other maybe Grundy Towers. But this was a commercial building that has an elevator, and we had some challenges with it. So we're trying to get a handle on how many buildings in towns has elevators. I think Herbie will be working with John and Sally. Also, too, when we have some concerns, the fire department has some concerns when there's hot work being done, such as roofs with tar and so forth, the fire department would like to know. We've had a couple calls with the roofers out there doing some hot work, and there's been some problems. It's not a shot at you, Dave. I know you're the roofer, but not the roofer that had the problem.
I'm surprised they're still using kettles, Joe.
Yeah.
That's a thing of the past.
Absolutely. And also, too, another challenge that we don't really think about are solar panels. They present challenges to the fire department if they get a call for fires with solar panels. On the police side, as the chief had mentioned, 1,066 calls for service during the month. That's a little bit below our average, because the first 10 months of the year, we've been averaging around 1,100 calls. 94 traffic stops. You think about that. They're the stops that, the officer's getting out the car, 3 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, any particular time, doesn't know what he's walking into. So that's pretty active. We've been averaging between 94 and 100 of those. You heard all the other things that we were doing with the school district. We interact with the school district quite a bit. With Grundy Towers, that was a new issue that the police chief thought would be a great idea with the national give back of drugs. We never think about the Grundy Towers, so we had an officer over there that day for about an hour. And last, I know we get off the cell tower thing, but in listening to everybody talk, I know there's concern about kids and, the exposure. There's probably 200 kids that are playing baseball, but everyone's got a phone in their pocket, and so do their parents. So I share that concern, but I've been doing a little work on this. We're concerned about that, and we're concerned about maybe getting some more money, or Verizon might be getting some more money if they lease out that tower. Telecommunications Act, 1996, preserves local zoning authority over the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facilities. The authority is subject to 3 main limitations, and guess what they were? Kind of what we were talking tonight. Local governments may not unreasonably discriminate among wireless service providers. Local governments may not prohibit or have an effect of prohibiting wireless service providers. This is a federal law. And the last one, local governments may not regulate health effects of radio frequency emissions so long as they comply with the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, which we heard tonight. They comply because they're like a 2%. So, they're the kind of things that exist. Also, too, there is currently in the State House, House Bill 1400 in the Consumer Affairs Committee, which would have effectively eliminated all municipal zoning authority over small cell wireless facilities. But the Boroughs Association has kicked up such a fuss, that vote wasn't taken, but it's going to be put back on the agenda again for this year. The bill is expected to be considered for a vote by the end of this year. So I know we're all concerned, surely from a safety standpoint, but there are laws already in effect to kind of limit what we can or can't do. Probably the good thing would be is to probably contact our state legislators and let them know that we don't support that bill.
Thank you.
Yep, that's it, thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, just a couple things I have. One, if you look at number 4, 5, 6, 7, I've been working very hard to try to get more money for the borough. You can see they're all grants that we're trying to get. Number 8 is a grant that we got for the $50,000 to pave West Railroad Avenue, and Betty worked very hard with the county and everybody to try to get that money, so that's on the agenda tonight. The other thing is, the Christmas tree lighting is here, November 29th at 6:30. I think they light the tree at 7 o'clock sharp. Michael, am I correct, or 7 o'clock sharp, right?
That's correct.
I don't think I have anything else. Do you have anything, Mrs. Lerner? All right, so we're adding, so everybody knows, right now we have 12 things on the agenda. We're adding the mirror wall, right?
May 9th to May 26th.
That'll be number 13. So everybody can write that down.
May 9th through what?
May 26th.
Okay.
And then we're adding, Mr. Devine wants to cut the weeds on Garden Street, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be number 14. And Dave, what do you want to do, clean Garden Street?
Just cut the grass.
So it's the same motion.
Same thing Tony wants.
All right, so that's number 14. Then we have a police car we need to sell.
Authorized advertising for sale of a used police car, it's 2010.
That'll be number 15. Anything else we need to add to the agenda? All right, so let me go through public participation again. Anybody on this side of the room have anything before on this voting? Anybody on this side of the room? There's no public participation, so. Okay, so let's go to our agenda items, number 1.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to, I'm sorry, you want me to go?
Sorry.
Yeah. So President, I'd like to make a motion to approve council meeting minutes of October 7th, 2019, accept treasurer's report September 2019, accept police and DJ's report for October 2019, accept fire chief's report for October, accept inspection department report for October, accept public works department report for October, accept the HARB report and decisions for October, all 2019.
Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 4.
President, make the motion to authorize the resolution for a multimodal transportation fund grant of $560,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to be used for Mill Street and Radcliffe Street traffic improvements.
Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to authorize a resolution for multimodal transportation fund grant of $91,538.50 from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to be used for pedestrian traffic signal upgrades.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 6.
President, I'd like to make a motion to authorize a resolution for a multimodal transportation fund grant of $690,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to be used for ADA accessibility improvements.
Mr. Catroci, questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 7.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to authorize a resolution for the request to apply for the PA Small Water and Sewer Program grant in the amount of $250,000 for the Otter Street Fields Rain Garden and Vegetated Swale through the Commonwealth Financing Authority and designating officials to execute documents in furtherance of this request.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize approval for 2019 West Railroad Avenue paving to be awarded to Bray Brothers Incorporated for a total contract amount of $50,631.25 for repaving and widening of West Railroad Avenue.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? Mr. Devine?
Yes, did this go out to bid?
Yes.
Yes?
Has to go out to bid.
I was just asking.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 9.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the 2019 Bristol Fall Classic to be held on Saturday, November 23rd, 2019, at the Public Works Building from 6:30 to 10.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 10.
President, I would like to make a motion to consider contributions to the Recorder of Deeds Office to preserve historical documents
Amount of 500.
in the amount of $500.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? All those, Mr. Devine?
Yes, I would just like to make a comment. I have no problem saying yes to donating $500, but I also would like to have an additional $500 that we can contribute to the Bristol Wildcats football program.
That's a whole different motion.
Well, I understand.
Hey, we're on an agenda item. Any other questions?
This is, you
All in
said
favor?
questions. You said
Aye.
questions.
All
or
in
comments.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's on this motion.
I
You want to
understand.
make another motion, you put it on the
Listen,
agenda.
I understand.
You can't add on, okay, forget about it. Number 11.
You
I'd like
said
to authorize
questions
an
or
advertising of the
Number
20...
11.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize advertising of the 2020 proposed budgets.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Number 12.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize advertising for public meeting for Tuesday, November 26th at 7 PM to adopt the 2020 budget.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Comments or questions? Mr. Gerard?
Yes, Mr. Dillon, I will not be in the area on that day, so I won't be able to attend.
Just so you know, everybody got a copy of your 2020 budget. Put a lot of time and effort into that. I guess, it's something that we worked on very hard, and it is a balanced budget. So there will be no increase in taxes or anything for 2020, but if anybody wants to change anything in the budget or add anything to the budget, we'll discuss it when you schedule the meeting. I didn't even know it.
November 26th at 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, number 14.
13.
I'm sorry.
President, I'd like to make a motion to allow the Muir Wall to dock, is that to allow the Muir Wall to dock at the Bristol Wharf from May 9th to May 26th?
Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Questions or
I
comments?
think we should move that date for docking to the 5th or the 6th. They're going to come in on the 5th or the 6th. So we're also
Allow them to dock here
But it's going to be open.
How about the month of May?
sometime during the month of May. In case the dates change either way a couple of days. All right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 14.
Number 14, Mr. President, I would like to add to the, well, we don't have to add.
On the agenda.
Motion to have our borough workers cut the grass, weeds, and brush along the outside of the Gordon Street fence.
Second by Mr. Gerard.
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
I have a question. I have a question.
Yes,
I have a question on the
Go ahead.
motion. Does this motion mean it's a one-shot deal? Or does this motion mean it's continuous?
Oh, yes, well,
Well, what is it?
yeah, continuous, one shot, one.
So we're taking that, so SEPTA's never, or Amtrak's never going to cut it then once we...
They never cut it down. The homeowners on Garden Street cut it. My crew and myself have gone over there and cut it. It's, occasionally the borough workers cut around the bridge, I see that happening. Occasionally, Amtrak workers do, the railroad itself, but it does get out of hand, and I get a lot of complaints about it, and I keep telling them it's not the borough property, but
Right.
But since, you know, I mean, I felt like I was attacked, that I'm not doing my job over there. Let's see, I want that grass cut, I want the people on Garden Street happy.
All right,
And,
since you just said that it's not the borough property,
no, it's Amtrak property.
okay, so are we allowed?
That was gonna be my question. to
Thank
the
you.
Solicitor, if we can even, can we adopt a resolution that's promoting?
Do it on Bear
something
Street
that
too?
is Illegal.
Well, typically, if someone doesn't cut their grass, we put them on notice that we are going to do it, correct, Mr. Dillon? And if they don't object, we do it and lien them. So we have to put Amtrak, or whoever owns it, on notice. And if they say, do not come on our property, we
Yeah.
cannot go on their property, because then it'd be trespassing. So I think the best you could do is say, we're going to try, but we have to put them on notice.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to be voted on.
Mr. Solano, I have a question, please. When I go over there, or someone from Garden Street goes onto that property, were we illegal?
Technically, you're trespassing.
Or trespassing on their property?
Can we change the motion to say, put them on notice?
Well,
I've had a congressman try to get him to do
I mean,
stuff.
officially, you know,
I
if
mean,
we at least, if you wanna go on record.
It's impossible.
Mr. Devine.
yes, I mean, the concern that I have is this, and I understand, you know, we're talking about legalities, but the reality is, SEPTA or Amtrak, whatever, they're so big, they don't care. They don't care if they get a citation because they're not going to pay it. They don't care if they get put on notice. They're not going to acknowledge it. And then the last part, and to me the most important part, is that we already cut Amtrak or SEPTA's property on the other side of Gordon Street. So we're doing it already. So, yeah.
You're saying that, but where?
Well, you know where the train, I mean, where the parking lot is, right?
The train
Except
station?
the parking lot, train station?
We don't cut that, we don't cut that.
I've seen our workers cut it. So now, all right, well then we'll just, if that's not the case, then we'll
All
just
right,
put it out.
there's a motion on it, on the floor by Mr. Devine. We need a roll call vote.
I mean, I'm sorry if
Go ahead.
I mean, obviously, we get what you're saying, and everybody wants that grass cut. But I would hope the goal would be, the objective would be to do something that we can actually
Do. Thank
And I would, if I'm understanding the solicitor correctly, like, we would be supporting a motion to go onto someone's property without legality. I don't want to expose, trust me, I've exposed myself to lawsuits before, I don't want to do
I
that again.
have seen the borough working
And-
to clean Beaver Street Bridge and around that area. So
Yeah, well,
they are
and I
already,
have
like
been-
Tony said, they're already doing it.
I
How come
understand.
nobody says, hey, don't get out of there, it's illegal to do that?
Right.
But when we ask to get something done, oh, it's illegal. But they're already over there doing that.
So I'm saying, why can't you just ask for a motion that says, can we put them on notice to say, we're going to cut the grass, and get an official response from them? Because if they don't respond, then at least we're in legal ground to say, we've told you so.
That would be fine with me, Mr.
Yeah, I'm okay
President.
with
Thank
that.
you.
It's not what Mr. Devine wanted.
I don't know, can we reword
That's
that?
not what Mr. Devine has.
Devine.
No, we have to go on this motion.
Okay, so can we amend the motion to say what
Yeah.
Mr. Pezich just asked? That we
Mr.
put Amtrak on notice,
And
and,
numerous times.
okay, well then why, if we already did it numerous times, let's just cut the grass then. What are we waiting for?
I don't think we should go on their property, but whatever you want to do, it's your
You're
ball.
already going on their property.
in your court.
Look, you know how I feel about it. If we gave them notice already and they still haven't responded, I'm sure they're not going to send somebody down to do it. So if it's,
Do we have, I mean, have we officially put them on notice? Have we sent them official letters indicating that we would do that?
Over the years, yes.
And then what do you do with the fence? Do you cut a hole in the fence?
no, you leave it. I'm only,
Just
that's
cut
what-
to the fence.
That's what I said, on the Gordon side of the fence, not over the fence.
I mean, I'm over there once a week cutting it.
You're,
Amtrak never stops me.
I just think it opens up a can of worms, because I have that problem down by House Street. So we're gonna cut the grass over there too?
Yeah.
Are we?
The people are complaining.
If they're not doing it, I'll support it.
I don't think
I
it
got
works.
a lot of areas I like to get cut. So, all right, Mr. Devine, your motion, you want to withdraw it or you want to vote on it?
No, I want to vote on it.
Okay,
As it's worded?
roll call
Yeah,
vote.
but we already
As
put
it's
them out the
worded.
notice, I mean.
I'd like to see that officially.
I can't change.
Can't ask me to vote to
Mr.
break the
Gerard.
law.
Okay, Garden Street, pay attention. Yes.
Mr. Ricchio is absent. Mr. Devine.
Yes.
Mr. Pezza.
No in the way the motion's worded.
Yes, I agree.
Ms. Cullen is absent. Ms. Rodriguez.
No, in the way it's worded, I just don't think we can do that.
Mr. Catroci.
No.
Mr. Di Giuseppe.
No. Motion dies, 4-2. Okay,
Number 15, I'd like to authorize the sale of the 2010 police car.
second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second by Mr. Pezza.